Yo, Tasha K just walked into a federal courtroom, opened her mouth about Offset, and walked out with her entire career on fire. The judge didn't just slap her, he obliterated her, then turned around and torched her own lawyer too. Bro, when's the last time you saw somebody lose a case so bad their attorney caught a fine on the way out the door? And Tasha K really thought running her mouth about Cardi's husband was a smart move? Nah, she just signed her own financial death certificate on national TV. Before we get into it, like, subscribe, don't miss it. Nah. Latasha Transrena Kebe, you'll know her as Tasha K, got demolished in federal bankruptcy court on May 6, 2026, after Belcalis Malini's Almonza, Cardi B, filed a contempt motion documenting at least 25 violations of their non-disparagement agreement. The trigger? A live stream where Tasha started running her mouth about Offset's alleged casino habits. Tasha really thought the agreement she signed, with her own pen, her own hand, her own signature, didn't apply to her. She really pulled up to a federal courtroom thinking the legal system was gonna treat her like the comment section. Nah. Now let's look at the receipts that show why this whole thing backfired into a nuclear meltdown. And before we get into it, let me set the table real quick. This isn't some random blogger beef. We're talking about a federal bankruptcy judge, a Grammy-winning artist with industry power, a $3.9 million defamation judgment from 2022 NBC News, a $1.2 million settlement plan, and a YouTuber who couldn't keep her lips sealed for 5 years. 5 years was a deal. 5. And Homegirl couldn't even make it to year 2 without lighting the whole thing on fire. That's a special kind of self-destruction. You don't see this often. You're literally watching somebody speedrun their own bankruptcy in real time. Buckle up, because what happened in that courtroom on May 6 wasn't just a loss. It was a public execution dressed up in a black robe. Let's start with a quote that lit the whole fuse. On a recent livestream, Tasha looked into the camera and said, and I quote, "Offset worked at the casino. He is down there 5 times a week clocking in. Some days he works first, second, and third shifts, and he uses everyone else's money to gamble with." Then she went even further. I was told he would probably still be in a certain relationship if he wasn't gambling away all that money. When I heard this, I had to do a double take. Bro said, what? You signed a paper saying you wouldn't speak on this man, his ex-wife, or anybody connected to her, and you really hopped on a live stream and said all that? That's the dumbest flex I've ever heard in my life. That's not just a slip of the tongue. That's a full TED talk on a man you legally cannot mention. The audacity, the disrespect, the confidence in being wrong. It's almost impressive how committed she was to losing. And let's break down the layers in that quote real quick. Because she didn't just say one bad thing. She stacked 4 violations into one paragraph. 1. Claiming Offset has a gambling habit. 2. Claiming he uses other people's money. 3. Implying it affected his marriage. 4. Tying it to a certain relationship that every viewer knew meant Cardi. That's not a slip. That's a speech. That's a written-out, fully narrated indictment of a man she's contractual banned from discussing. And she delivered it with full eye contact like she was reading the State of the Union. Now, in the actual court filing submitted on May 4th, 2026, Cardi's team didn't hold back. Per the document reviewed by Complex, her lawyers wrote that despite Tasha's delusional belief that the law does not apply to her, willful violations of court orders must have consequences. Delusional belief. That's a federal court filing using the word delusional. When I read that, I almost dropped my phone. That's not a regular L. That's a "we are tired of you" L put in writing for the judge to read. Lawyers don't drop the word delusional in a federal pleading unless they want the judge to feel it in his chest. That's a move that screams, "Your Honor, please." We begged her, and she would not stop. Rolling Stone confirmed Cardi's team described Tasha's behavior as relentless harassment in similar past filings, so this delusion language is part of a pattern. Cardi's lawyers have been telling the court this for over a year. She will not stop. Make her stop. Then it gets worse for Tasha's defense. Cardi's attorneys flagged that Tasha's own legal team cited a fake case in their filing, a hallucinated case named Doe versus Gonzalez, plus a fabricated quote attributed to a real case called McGregor v. Chierico Billboard. Cardi's lawyers wrote, using fake and hallucinated cases casts a shadow on invalidity on the judicial process and causes the public to question its commitment to truth and justice, which is particularly odious. Complex. Brew. They literally accuse a lawyer of running ChatGPT into a federal courtroom. That's not a tap. That's a headshot to the entire defense. Pause. Let that sink in. We're in 2026 and a defense attorney walked into federal court in a high-profile celebrity case with case citations that don't exist. Cases that AI made up. Cases that lived in the imagination of a chatbot. And he filed it, signed it, put his bar number on it. The legal community has been warning about this for 2 years. There's literally a tracker called the AI Hallucination Cases database documenting hundreds of these incidents, and Tasha's lawyer somehow still stepped in the same booby trap. The word "Odis" in a federal filing? That's not a clapback. That's a career ender being typed in real time. And here's a receipt that hits different. Cardi's filing didn't just call out the fake case. It called it particularly "Odis," which in legal language is basically the equivalent of saying this is morally repugnant. Federal lawyers don't use the word "Odis" lightly. That word has weight. It's the kind of word reserved for fraud on the court, perjury, or obstruction. So Cardi's team wasn't just pointing at a typo. They were saying Tasha's defense team committed a procedural sin so deep it's unforgivable. And the judge read that, out loud, in open court, with Tasha sitting there. After the loss, Tasha hopped on a YouTube livestream that same night and tried to play it cool. She told her audience, it was a *** show today in court. Nobody was prepared. It is what it is, mextapekayak.com. Then she said her attorney Chad Van Horn told her he got hit with a 10% penalty on Cardi's attorney fees. She actually said on camera, I'm used to losing, but I'd always overcome. We lost the war. But you know what? I have my dignity, hot new hip-hop. Nah, you can't say that and expect people to take you seriously. You owe somebody nearly $4 million. You got fined again. And you talking about dignity? That line right there? That's where she lost the plot completely. Dignity is a thing you have, not a thing you announce. The moment you have to say, I have dignity out loud, that dignity is gone. It left the building. It moved out of state. It changed its number. And Tasha didn't even notice. Let me put this in perspective for y'all. This woman is making roughly $20,000 a month in court-ordered payments. That's $240,000 a year just to keep Cardi off her neck. And she still hopped on livestream the same night the judge ruled against her to talk about it. There's no PR firm in the country that would have allowed that. There's no lawyer in their right mind who'd say, yes, please, broadcast the L immediately. Your audience needs to see you process this trauma in 4K. But Tasha did it anyway. Why? Because content is her addiction. The dopamine hit of being live, on camera, with thousands of people watching, that's worth more to her than her own legal survival. And that's the tragic flaw that's gonna sink her. And Cardi's response? She didn't even need a press conference. She hopped on Instagram with a story that just read, it's all fun and games till the brim. One sentence. That's it. When I saw that, I was like, yeah, the war is over. That's the energy of somebody who already knows they won. No long captions. No subliminals. No diss track. Just one sentence delivered like a final boss. That's how you flex. Cardi didn't even spell out who she was talking to. She didn't have to. The whole internet knew. And every word was wrapped in that I told you energy that hits 10x harder than screaming. Now that we got the quotes, let's connect the dots. Because the timeline is where the story turns into a horror movie for Tasha. That live stream dropped right when Offset was already in headlines over the alleged Lil TJ shooting situation at the Seminole Hard Rock Casino. Tasha didn't just stumble into Offset's name. She waited for the news cycle to peak and then jumped in with both feet. That's a move of someone who's desperate for clicks. That's not journalism. That's not asking questions. That's an ambush content strategy where you wait for the algorithm to be hot, then dive in headfirst hoping to ride the wave. And she got the wave all right, straight into a federal courtroom. Remember that contempt motion? It was filed on April 10th, 2026, and Cardi's team had already documented 25-plus violations before Tasha even said a casino quote Yahoo. So picture this. Homegirl was already in the danger zone. The receipts were already stacked. And what does she do? Goes live and adds another count to her own indictment. That's terrible timing. Brew. Imagine being on traffic court probation for speeding tickets and then live streaming yourself doing 120 in a school zone. That's the level of self-sabotage we're talking about. The contempt motion was already submitted. The trap was already set, and she walked right into it like she didn't see the giant blinking sign that said felony-level stupidity ahead. Now here's the part nobody's talking about. That bankruptcy plan? It was confirmed in March 2025 and locks Tasha into roughly $20,000 a month toward a $3.9 million judgment Instagram. 20 grand a month. And she's already been late on payments according to Cardi's filing. So while she's behind on the deal that's keeping her financially alive, she's running her mouth on the O&E topic that could kill that deal. Any smart person would have waited. But Tasha isn't smart. She's reckless. Let me make sure you'll understand the math here. $20,000 a month means $240,000 a year. Over 5 years, that's $1.2 million. That deal already cut her debt by about $2.7 million from the original judgment. Cardi gave her a discount. Cardi was the merciful one in this story. And Tasha repaid that mercy by going on livestream and dragging Offset's name through casino mud. That's not just biting the hand that feeds you. That's biting the hand that bandages you after you tried to chew your own arm off. And the lawyer situation? That fake case citation didn't appear out of nowhere. Tasha's attorney Chad Van Horn's office had to file a corrective notice on May 5th, literally O&E day before the hearing, admitting the citations were busted. That's the legal equivalent of turning in your homework after the teacher already caught you cheating. Imagine pulling up to court the next day with your, "Oh, by the way, our last filing had hallucinated citations, letters still warm from printer." The judge already read it. He already saw the fake cases. The corrective notice didn't fix anything. It just confirmed the original filing was AI slop. So opposition really thought nobody would notice? In federal court? Come on, man. The federal judiciary literally has internal memos circulating about how to detect AI hallucinations in legal briefs. Judges are looking for this now. They are trained to spot it. You can't sneak it past a federal clerk in 2026. That's a fantasy. The behind-the-scenes piece nobody's catching is this. Cardi's team has been playing the long game. They didn't rush to court the first time Tasha slipped. They let her rack up violations like Pokemon cards, documented every single one, and dropped the receipts in a single nuclear filing. That's not legal work. That's strategy. That's chess. Think about it like a heist movie. Cardi's lawyers were the surveillance team. They had cameras on every Tasha post, every live stream, every Instagram story. They knew Tasha would post and delete, so they screenshot in real time. They knew she'd use coded language, so they kept a glossary of every reference. And when the file got thick enough to crack a windshield, they walked it into federal court and slammed it on the table. That's a 25 violation indictment, not a 25 violation complaint. They came to bury her, not bargain. Let's also talk about the financial reality nobody's emphasizing. Cardi B's net worth is reportedly in the tens of millions. She's coming off a Grammy career, a top album, brand deals, and one of the most powerful platforms in hip-hop. Tasha K is a YouTube blogger who literally asked her fans for donations during the bankruptcy proceedings. That's the gap. That's not a David versus Goliath fight. That's Goliath versus a guy who lost his slingshot. Cardi can litigate this case forever. Tasha can't even cover next month's rent without livestream revenue. The asymmetry is the whole point. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Let's zoom in on the language nobody's decoding. Now check this out. Nobody's talking about the phrase "a certain relationship" in Tasha's casino quote. She didn't say Cardi. She didn't say his marriage. She said a certain relationship. That word choice is forensic gold. Why? Because it proves Tasha knew she was bound by the agreement. She tried to talk around Cardi's name like a substitute teacher avoiding a curse word. Cardi's lawyers caught it immediately and called it indirect references and coded language in the filing. And Tasha really thought that little workaround would hold up in front of a federal judge? That's embarrassing. That's like robbing a bank wearing a Halloween mask of your own face and thinking the FBI won't figure it out. The mask doesn't make you invisible. It makes you look guiltier. Coded language, by the way, is one of the oldest tricks in the contempt of court playbook, and judges hate it more than anything else. Why? Because it shows intent. It shows you knew you were violating the order, and you tried to engineer workaround. That's premeditation. That's a legal equivalent of, "Officer, I wasn't speeding. I was just driving fast in a hurry." Judges aren't dumb. They've seen every dance. And the moment a judge sees coded language, the gloves come OFF. Now look at ONE word from her post-court livestream. Dignity. She said, I have my dignity. That's not confidence. That's a coping mechanism. Real people who are winning don't need to bring up their dignity. That word slips out when somebody's quietly admitting the loss. If Tasha had half a brain, she would have stayed off camera that night. People who actually have dignity show it through silence, through composure, through the ability to take an L without narrating it to 50,000 viewers. The minute she opened her mouth on that live stream, she contradicted the very word she was clinging to. Next, analyze the specific instruction the judge gave. Take down content, including material featuring her own logo. Her own logo. Think about that. That means Tasha was branding violation content with her Unwind with Tasha K identity, monetizing it, building views off it, attaching her business to it. That's not free speech. That's a revenue model. And the judge saw right through it. That logo detail is huge because it transforms a whole legal argument. If Tasha had been venting on a private personal account, maybe she'd have a whisper of defense. But putting your business logo on the content turns it into commercial speech. And commercial speech tied to a court-banned topic? That's fraud adjacent. That's why the judge specifically called out the logo. He wasn't just shutting down her words. He was shutting down her brand ability to profit off Cardi's name. That's the kill shot. The post and delete pattern is the smoking gun. Cardi's filing explicitly calls out that deleting posts after they have already been viewed and monetized does not undo the violation. Now apply common sense. Why would somebody post and delete on a loop for over 25 instances? That's not an accident. That's a strategy. She was trying to grab the views, eat off the algorithm, then erase a trail before legal could screenshot. The problem? Cardi's team had already screenshotted everything. Tasha was playing checkers. Cardi was playing 4D chess. The post and delete strategy is also literally a confession when you put 25 of them in a row. One deletion is, I changed my mind. TWO is, I'm being careful. But 25? That's a documented pattern. That's something a federal judge can point to and say this person knew they were violating the order, did it anyway, and tried to hide the evidence. That's intent. That's malice. That's why the contempt motion landed like a guillotine. And one more piece, the lawyer's own words after the hearing. According to Tasha, Chad Van Horn told her this is going to be a PR nightmare for his firm. Pause on that phrase, PR nightmare. That's not a lawyer worried about his client. That's a lawyer worried about his OWN reputation. When your own attorney is mentally distancing himself from your case in real time, it's over. You're not a client anymore. You're a liability. You're the case he doesn't want at the next bar association mixer. You're the name he scrubs off his website. That single phrase tells you the relationship between lawyer and client is fractured. Van Horn isn't fighting for Tasha. He's calculating how to survive Tasha. And that's the most dangerous position a defendant can be in. Now let's see how the media covered this. Because every outlet found a different angle, and the pattern across all of them tells you Tasha lost on every front. Complex framed the situation as Cardi seeking economically painful sanctions, and sent to the casino comments as a trigger event. That tracks with the documents. They're keeping it factual. No editorializing. Just receipts. Billboard went a different angle, leading with the AI bombshell, calling out the fake K citation as a most damning element of Tasha's defense billboard. That framing made it less about Cardi versus Tasha and more about the legal profession itself, a much bigger picture. Billboard understood that the real story isn't just one celebrity beef. It's a watershed moment for AI use in the legal system. And Billboard had been tracking this case for years, all the way back to the original 2022 verdict. TMZ kept it on brand and tabloid, focusing on the late payments. Cardi claims Tasha K often late on payments. That's the receipts angle. Different outlet, different spin, same conclusion. Tasha's losing. Hot New Hip Hop framed it as Cardi taking Tasha K back to court, putting Cardi in the active, dominant role in the narrative. And honestly, that framing is the most accurate. Cardi isn't reacting. She's hunting. iHeart took the financial angle, reporting that Cardi specifically asked the court to reinstate the full $3.9 million immediately because Tasha violated the bankruptcy plan terms. That's the angle that should terrify Tasha, because that's not a fine. That's not a slap. That's the entire mountain coming back. The $1.2 million payment plan was a mercy. Cardi was asking the judge to remove the mercy. Rolling Stone had the longest memory in the room. They pulled up the original 2022 lawsuit language where Cardi described Tasha's behavior as a relentless campaign of slander. That word, relentless, has been in Cardi's legal vocabulary for almost 5 years now. That tells you this isn't a new problem. It's the same problem, repeated, year after year, until Cardi finally said we're going federal. Now, some Tasha K supporters online are saying this is unfair, that the non-disparagement clause violates her First Amendment rights. Cardi's filing already destroyed that argument. The issue is not free speech, but enforcement of a private agreement that was voluntarily entered into. You signed it, voluntarily. You can't cry First Amendment after taking the deal that saved you from paying $4 million up front. Tasha supporters are reaching trying to defend this. The receipts don't lie. The First Amendment doesn't protect you from contracts you signed. The Constitution doesn't override a settlement agreement. That's first-year law school stuff. Anybody arguing otherwise is just emotionally attached to the drama and not actually reading the documents. But here's what nobody is saying. The mainstream narrative is Tasha K can't stop running her mouth. That's the easy take, the lazy take. Here's a real story they won't tell you. This whole situation is a masterclass in psychological warfare, and Tasha K walked herself into the trap. This is bigger than gossip. This is a case study in how powerful legal teams use settlement structures as weapons. Here's what I think actually happened. Cardi's legal team didn't just want a non-disparagement clause to protect her name. They wanted a tripwire. They knew Tasha, somebody whose entire brand is built on pot stirring, would never be able to stay quiet for 5 years. The clause wasn't really a muzzle. It was bait. Think about it. If Tasha actually shut up, Cardi gets her $1.2 million over time and everybody moves on. But if Tasha slips, even once, Cardi's lawyers had a green light to demand the full $3.9 million immediately. That's psychological chess. They built a structure where Tasha could only win by being a person she's incapable of being. Tasha is playing checkers while Cardi is playing chess, and every move was calculated. The genius is in the asymmetry. Cardi loses nothing by Tasha staying silent. But Cardi wins big every single time Tasha slips. That's what lawyers call a heads I win, tails you lose structure. And Tasha walked into it with a smile. Remember those bars about a certain relationship we broke down earlier? That's the real reason Cardi's team jumped on it so fast. They weren't waiting for Tasha to scream Cardi's name. They were waiting for ANY indirect reference because they knew the post and delete pattern would eventually create enough evidence to bury her. Every move Tasha makes is predictable. She's already lost. She just doesn't know what game she was playing. Predictability is the deadliest weapon in any legal battle. The moment your opponent can anticipate your next move, you've already lost. Cardi's team knew Tasha would post. They knew she'd delete. They knew she'd use coded language. They built the trap based on Tasha's own personality. That is psychological warfare at its most efficient. And there's a deeper layer here about industry power nobody's discussing. Cardi B isn't just a rapper anymore. She's a Grammy-winning, top-of-the-charts force whose new album, Am I the Drama, is dropping with major industry backing. Tasha K is a YouTube blogger fighting bankruptcy. The financial firepower behind these two parties isn't even in the same universe. Cardi can fund this legal war indefinitely. Tasha can't even pay her monthly installment on time TMZ. This isn't a fair fight. This is a heavyweight throwing hands with somebody who skipped weigh-ins. Add to that, Cardi has a cultural power. She has the audience sympathy. She has the media tilting in her favor. Even outlets that historically gave Tasha a platform are now reporting straight from Cardi's filings. The narrative ground itself has shifted. There's no friendly territory for Tasha anymore. And here's the most uncomfortable truth. Tasha's whole brand is now compromised. Her audience watches her for the source, the mess, the I said what I said energy. But she literally can't do that anymore for the topics that get the most traffic. She built a media empire on Cardi B drama, and now she's legally barred from monetizing the very lane that made her famous. She's rewriting her brand on the fly because her real story isn't impressive. It's just a court order with her name on it. Imagine being a chef who's no longer allowed to cook the dish that made you famous. Imagine being a comedian who can't tell the joke that built your career. That's Tasha right now. The lane that built her, the lane she dominated, the lane that made her name in the blog game, it's all closed off. Permanently. By a federal judge. The industry shift here is wild too. We're watching a moment where blog culture, the post and delete, I'm just asking questions, gossip as content era, is finally meeting consequences in a federal courtroom. This isn't just about Cardi versus Tasha. This is a culture telling every blogger, the receipts now go both ways. Tasha K represents the OLD blog era that the culture is done protecting. For a decade, bloggers operated like they were untouchable. Anonymous accounts, alleged sources. I heard from somebody. That whole vocabulary was a legal shield. But the shield has been broken. Cardi B kicked it down brick by brick. And every blogger watching this is now thinking, wait, can they come for me too? Yes they can. The era of consequence-free gossip is over. There's also a generational angle here. Older media figures grew up in the Wendy Williams era, where you could say outrageous things on a radio show and the worst that happened was a stern letter from a publicist. That era is over. The new generation of artists has lawyers on retainer, social listening teams, screenshot databases, and the financial firepower to drag bloggers into federal court. Cardi B is a blueprint for how Gen Z and millennial artists handle defamation now. Forget the old school rise above it advice. The new playbook is SUE, aggressively, with receipts, and don't stop until they are bankrupt. And that's the truth they won't tell you. So what happens next? Here's what's most likely to happen. The written order is going to drop on the docket within days, and when it does, it's going to be uglier than what we know now. Cardi's team is going to push for the full $3.9 million reinstatement, and the judge has already shown which way he leans. When that order hits paper, Tasha is going to be staring at a number she can't pay, can't bankrupt away, and can't spin on a live stream. She's going to look desperate screaming into the void while the bills pile up. The silence from Cardi's camp is going to hurt her more than any diss track could. Because silence is power. Silence says, I don't even need to acknowledge you anymore. And that's the worst kind of energy to fight against. There's no comeback to nothing. Now, if the alternative happens and Tasha somehow keeps the $1.2 million plan alive, she still loses, because she's now under a microscope so tight she can't even say the word Bronx without her lawyer calling. Every live stream becomes a legal landmine. She'll try to escalate, beef with somebody else, anything to stay relevant. But nobody's gonna care. Tasha is not ready for what's coming as she slips ONE more time. We saw what Cardi did the first time. Round 2 won't be a payment plan. It'll be a financial funeral. And that's the trap of it all. Even the lucky outcome leaves her in handcuffs. Even the win still feels like a loss. There's no version of the next 12 months where Tasha breathes free. Looking at the bigger picture, this is going to be the case lawyers reference for years. Mark my words. 3 years from now, every entertainment lawyer drafting a non-disparagement clause for a celebrity client is going to point to Almonzo versus Kebe and say, build it like this. Tasha just became the legal precedent that ENDS the post and delete era. That's not a footnote, that's a legacy. And it's the worst kind of legacy because Tasha didn't earn it through skill. She earned it by losing so publicly that the law had to evolve around her stupidity. Future bloggers are gonna learn her name not because of her content, but because of her litigation history. That's a brutal way to be remembered. That's not what she signed up for when she started Unwind with Tasha K. But that's where the bill came due. For Chad Van Horn, his career just took a hit that's gonna take years to recover from. Federal sanctions for AI hallucinated case citations is a kind of thing that follows you to every CLE conference for the rest of your life billboard. His firm is gonna lose clients. Other lawyers are gonna whisper. 5 years from now, people will look back at this as a cautionary tale every law professor teaches in legal ethics class. And here's the kicker. There's literally a public AI hallucination cases database tracking every lawyer caught submitting fake AI citations. His name is gonna live in that database forever. Searchable. Permanent. A digital scarlet letter on the entire firm's reputation. Future clients will Google him before hiring him, and the first thing that pops up will be Cardi B case, fake citation, federal sanction. That's not a setback. That's a career-defining stain. And here's a forecast nobody else is making. The ripple effect on other bloggers. Watch the next 6 months. Watch how many YouTube gossip channels suddenly get quiet about certain artists. Watch how the language softens. Watch how allegedly becomes the most used word in every video. That's the Tasha effect. That's the chilling impact of seeing one of the biggest names in blog culture get publicly bankrupted. Every blogger out there is now doing risk math in their head before pressing record. That's a culture shift, not just a court case. Cardi didn't just win a contempt motion. She rewrote the rules of celebrity-blogger interaction for the next decade. Meanwhile, Cardi, she's about to drop by the drama, and the headlines write themselves. Her legal wins become marketing. Every court victory adds to the mythology of don't play with Belcalis. She's watching her power grow while Tasha watches the culture move on without her, and there's nothing Tasha can do about it. The album title alone, Am I the Drama?, is starting to feel like a thesis statement. Cardi is leaning into the narrative. She's not running from it. She's branding herself as a woman who made bloggers regret typing her name. And every legal win feeds that mythology. Every headline like Cardi B demolishes Tasha K in federal court is free promotion. The streams will follow. The brand deals will follow. The cultural cachet will compound. Cardi turned a defamation lawsuit into a career ARC. And let's zoom out one more time, because this story isn't really about two women. It's about power. It's about who holds it, who loses it, and how fast the internet eats a loser alive once they slip. Tasha had power for years. She had eyes, attention, audience, influence. And one live stream, one casino quote, one reckless minute in front of a camera. And now, she's the punchline. She's the cautionary tale. She's the case study future law students will memorize. That is a fall. That is a crash. That is what happens when somebody confuses freedom of speech with freedom from consequences. Whatever happens, one thing's clear. Tasha K already lost. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed uncovering the real story, smash that like button and hit subscribe so you never miss when we expose what everyone else is too scared to say.